begin by offering my greeting, good morning, to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Arab states and India. Good evening to our friends in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and good late evening to our friends in Australia. Good to see you. We recently had our Katina ceremony, a annual event. If you have more than 5 bhikkhus for the rainy season retreat, it was attended by 43 monks, including Ajahn Achalo, 10 other abbots, and we had about 55 residents in the monastery for about a week, another 15 at a house in front of the monastery, 70 plus 30 Malaysian guests in a nearby resort. So we had approximately 100 friends for a week and 300 day guests on the day of the Katina. So a little bit tired, but happily tired. So many friends. And we had the offering of a new Mahatera reception complex in the monastery. Ajahn said that many auspicious influences did manifest and give their blessing at the ceremony. So it was quite auspicious, I believe. Nice to see your faces. We have some questions. Yes, Kap.
Question 1. In order to one day become a sotapanna in this lifetime or some lifetime very soon, should we try to emulate the qualities of a sotapanna to sort of fake it till you make it? Many suttas in Samyutta Nikaya 55 describe the various qualities of a sotapanna. They have faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, have ethical conduct, loved by the noble ones. They don't kill, lie, steal, commit sexual misconduct, engage in the various aspects of wrong speech, or consume intoxicants. They are freely generous and love-giving, and they have wisdom of arising and passing away, of dependent origination. The stream is defined as the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right concentration, and the stream enterer is said to possess the Noble Eightfold Path. Majjhima Nikaya 115 also says that the noble disciple cannot view any conditioned phenomena as permanent, pleasurable, or a self, and they cannot murder their mother or father, intentionally injure a Buddha, cause schism in the Sangha, or dedicate themselves to another teacher. With gratitude for your thoughts and advice.
The question with regards for people who have the aspiration to become a stream enterer in this lifetime or a life soon after. So that's what is a stream enterer? A stream enterer is someone who experiences deep insight into the ultimate nature of mind and conditions, experiences the unconditioned, and then has unshakable faith in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and is then predisposed to being ethical. So those 5 precepts that Lord Buddha recommends that lay people keep, apparently stream enterers can't break them. Their goodness is so established in their heart, they know what is virtue, what is non-virtue, what is ethical, what is unethical, and if it's unethical, they won't do it. And the mind is aligned with profound goodness. They have had insight into the 3 characteristics. So because of that, they don't grasp at conditions as being permanent or satisfactory, or grasp at them as being a solid, unchanging self. So the question is, do we try to behave like that as a positive affirmation, as a mode of being? Would that be conducive to realizing that goal? And the answer is yes. So that's exactly why Lord Buddha recommends that we keep the 5 precepts. When we keep the 5 precepts strictly, your behavior is like a noble being's, like someone who has attained to Dhamma. So it's like you may have the desire, someone who's attained to the stream of Dhamma, the desire to do unskillful things will be much less. But when you have the desire, but you live within the parameters of the ethical precepts, you're restraining that. Even though you have these strong desires, you're restraining them. They're within skillful parameters. So that in itself will make less bad karma. There will be less to feel remorse about. And the act of restraining greed and hatred, delusion, the act of even restraining that is producing certain type of merit. It's good karma. And when we look at the other lists, the 4 great efforts, the effort to prevent, the effort to maintain, these are efforts, and the right effort is part of the Eightfold Path, and it creates auspicious karma that will help you deepen in your cultivation, development of insight. With regards to the stream enterer will understand that rites and rituals are not what leads to liberation. And someone who has not yet had that insight the mind will tend to be somewhat superstitious, or at least hopeful that by doing a certain number of hours of sitting, a certain number of hours of walking, a certain number of chants, a certain number of mantras, certain number of offerings, that you can get enlightenment. The self view tends to think like that. I do this and then I'll get that. That's kind of a rewards. We're also conditioned by ideas like graduating from high school, graduating from university, paying off a car in 5 years. We have that kind of tendency to think that if we do certain things, we'll get certain results. So the stream enterer will know that it's not the rites or rituals or ceremonies that get them liberated, because they will have experienced a liberated mind for a period of time, and they will have known what they were doing that led to that. And what they were doing was being mindful. There was a certain amount of mindfulness, collectedness, and wisdom present in the mind. And so the stream enterer will have an understanding of the factors, mental faculties and factors that were present in the mind when the insight occurs. Now, the thing about this, the rites and rituals, is if a rite or a ritual or a ceremony is conducive to developing mindfulness, is conducive to bringing the mind to some collectedness, is conducive to producing merit that brightens the mind and helps ripen the mind towards enlightenment, but then the rites and the rituals and the ceremonies are skillful. So we need to understand that. Some people, they want to behave like a sotapanna, and they'll say, no, I don't do rites and rituals. And I don't want to do too many ceremonies. I want to be a stream enterer, so I'm not going to do ceremonies. And that's not necessarily very wholesome. The skillful ceremonies are offering some flowers, bowing, chanting, things that make the mind humble. Remember the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha with respect. These are very wholesome. And I often recommend committing to a certain number of hours of sitting, certain number of hours of walking, certain number of amount of chanting. It's not that you're collecting brownie points, and at a certain point you'll cross the finish line. But the point is, when we sit in formal meditation, we are making an effort to establish better than normal mindfulness. We are inclining the mind to collectedness. So that when we look at the Eightfold Path, you've got right mindfulness. And we need to do the formal meditation, because that makes us more mindful. When we take one meditation object and truly are with that meditation object, the mindfulness becomes sharper. The stability in the mind becomes more. And then when we're engaging in other activities, we're able to apply that mindfulness in our other activities. So you'll be more likely to notice when an unwholesome mindset is arising, and you'll have more energy in the mind to restrain it. But if you don't do the formal practice, there's another kind of misunderstanding modern people make of like, I'm just going to be mindful in all postures. I'm not going to meditate because I'm just going to be mindful. And it's like, mindful while they're watching a movie, mindful while they're looking at porn, mindful while they're smoking dope. You know, it's like that can go in all sorts of directions, not quite heading towards nibbana. So you do have to have the commitment to the ethical precepts, and you do have to do enough meditation that the mind can recognize what is wholesome and unwholesome and restrain the unwholesome. So good mindfulness can actually contain and restrain unwholesome, unskillful things. And if you think that you are being mindful while you're smoking dope or looking at porn and watching a movie, then I would suggest that it's not very good mindfulness, not the kind of mindfulness required to liberate the mind. And some people might disagree with me, and that's fine. But so unshakable faith in the Buddha. So that's the result. Obviously, if you can have deep faith in the Buddha first, that's going to be helpful. Lord Buddha said, even if a person has no wisdom or no real understanding what the Buddha taught, if they have deep faith in the Buddha, it's as if they have one eye. So suppose you need two eyes so that you know where to go. At least if you have faith in the Buddha, you have one eye. You're beginning to see more correctly. Obviously, when you have mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, you're going to have two eyes. You'll see better. So at first, our faith in the Buddha is based on the tremendous effort and energy he made in developing qualities, cultivating merit, realizing what he realized. A person who has insights, faith in the Buddha, becomes a different quality of faith. It's the Buddha understood the ultimate kind of pure, immaculate nature of mind when the kilesas are eradicated from it. And then he explained to us what we do to experience that. And so a person who has an insight when they experience their deeper nature, ultimate potential, then the feeling of gratitude to Lord Buddha is enormous and natural. It's like because people have no idea at first, we may have an intuition. There's some goodness here and there's some potential here, but it's often obscured by the five hindrances, by ignorance, by delusion. But when the self-view falls away for a period of time, or a person experiences a liberated state or has a deep insight into one of the three characteristics, the quality of serenity, bliss, tranquility, the absence of suffering, the radiance and peace, the coolness, the absence of heat, of warmth, of the kilesa, the fire of the kilesa is so sublime and stunning and beautiful. And people feel that, and it's like they come out of that experience. And when the habitual self comes back, that self feels enormous gratitude, because there is the understanding that if we didn't have the Buddha who explained how to meditate, how to be ethical, all of these things, we would not have that experience. But when we follow the instructions and we cultivate the Eightfold Path, and a person has that experience, then the faith in Buddha, it's like when Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, when Anya Kondanya became a stream enterer in a deer park, the first enlightened disciple, he was like the living proof that what the Buddha realized could be realized by other human beings. And in the Tibetan tradition, they talk about Buddha nature or Buddha potential. So underneath the greed, hatred, and delusion, when ignorance is uprooted, purified mind exists and can be experienced. So we cultivate our faith, and then we also meditate. And when we have insights, our faith in the Buddha becomes deeper, and it becomes a wise faith that is informed by correct practice and experience of less suffering. So the First Noble Truth, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, cause of suffering, craving, grasping. There is a cessation of suffering. How? If we cultivate the Eightfold Path. So we do our daily meditation, we keep our ethical precepts, we do retreats, we go on pilgrimages, etc. You will begin to experience the mind with much less suffering for periods of time. So you sit, meditation, 5-10 minutes, much less hindrances, maybe some peacefulness, 10, 15, 20 minutes. This is as a result of following Lord Buddha's instructions. And then we understand, if I have right mindfulness and I'm meditating on a skillful meditation object, there's more rapture, more tranquility, more serenity, less suffering, even in the present moment basis, if we follow the instructions. Sometimes we have some difficult sits, but in general, if you meditate every day, you're going to experience some peacefulness, and we can start to feel deep gratitude. It's true what the Buddha taught. It's true the remedies he suggests work. It's true that when I train my mind in a little bit of collectedness, I get more energy and more clarity throughout the day. I'm able to think more wisely, speak more wisely, restrain unskillful. Then I have less things to feel remorse about. This natural feeling then of feeling grateful to the Buddha. Not everybody does. And this is some people have a tendency to not give credit where it's due. Some people follow instructions given by others, get some good results, and then kind of think they worked it all out by themselves. Some people have that kind of a tendency towards arrogance and a lack of gratitude. But most people will naturally feel some gratitude. And for myself, I feel a combination of gratitude and loving respect for the Buddha. Even though he's gone to Nibbana, right, there's still for myself a feeling of deep love and gratitude. And I think that's quite wholesome. So we cultivate our faith, recollect the benefits we've received, and is very closely linked to gratitude and respect. And so yes, keep the 5 precepts, meditate each day. The stream enterers have more mindfulness because they've uprooted a certain amount of ignorance and delusion. So we have to bring more mindfulness to our experience. That's what the commitment to daily meditation does. So that's like behaving like a stream enterer, deep commitment, unshakable faith. So you have a deep commitment. You're going to do what it takes to fully realize the goal. And, keep cultivating that 8-fold path. Keep recollecting the refuge daily. Keep those precepts. Do retreats. Give freely. And Lord Buddha did say that if we truly knew the benefits of generosity, we wouldn't eat a single meal without sharing some of it. He could see the consequences of generosity. So, yes.
Sadhu. Question to the Ajahn. In a few months, there will be Tibetan monks visiting our area and staying with local temples. What do you recommend is the best way to observe and try to learn from them if I generally adhere to mostly Theravada practice and study? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think if they're good Tibetan practitioners, then you will be able to observe their faith and their cultivation of the Brahmaviharas. Like a good monk or nun will have a certain amount of metta and compassion, mudita. So whatever bright qualities, whatever cheerful, uplifting, inspiring qualities you see, you can have mudita. And but yes, if you're committed to your Theravada practice, basically happy with that, I wouldn't recommend that you attend a highest Tantra initiation to a multi-armed, multi-headed deity with lots of weapons, etc., and a consort, etc. So, be careful. You don't want to confuse yourself. And I think it tends to be the case that people who will practice Vajrayana probably have a particular kind of a proclivity. They will naturally be interested in deity practice, and Theravada practitioners in general, most of them probably aren't, and that's okay. So we work with what our character traits are, what we have faith in, what we feel confident in. But when we do see, trying to restrain judgment, because oftentimes we don't, the various traditions don't really know what the other tradition is doing, because you have to study it deeply for a while and live within it to understand how these skillful means work, what they are. So if you see something that you don't understand, don't be quick to be critical. Just say, not sure, not sure. And yeah, tend to be pretty cheerful. The Tibetans, I notice in Bodhgaya, are quite a cheerful presence, and under the Bodhi tree, around the Bodhi tree, doing their bows, doing their mandalas, or reciting their mantras. I certainly appreciate their presence when I'm in Bodhgaya.
Sadhu. Question 3. Dear Ajahn, what is your personal meditation like in terms of sensations, experience, and perceptions?
What is my personal meditation experience like in terms of sensations, perceptions? So it's a bit of a nosy question, isn't it? But it's also kind of fair enough. People come and listen to the Ajahn week after week. You want to know, is he, what's his meditation like? Should I listen to this guy? So I will attempt to answer, what is my meditation like? So I guess in the beginning, I have 3 decades of experience now, 3 decades of meditation experience. And I would say in general, 30 years into it, I would say that I think maybe 15 or 20% as much as I used to. So I have 80% less thoughts than I had 3 decades ago. That doesn't mean I'm stupid. It means that I can restrain my mind from, oftentimes I can restrain my mind from unnecessary noise or neurotic obsessions. If I want to think about something, I can direct my mind to think about the thing I want to think about. And if I don't want to think, I can go and meditate and stop thinking. I remember when I have a break from thinking, give the interest to something else. I remember when I was a second Pansa monk at Ajahn Anand's monastery, and Ajahn Tong is one of Ajahn Anand's well-practiced disciples who may have some abilities. And he looked at me one day and he just says, you know, if I don't want to think, I don't have to think. And then he just laughed. And he'd obviously been noticing how much thinking the Western monk was having occur in his mind. Ajahn Tong was renowned because he was a novice with Ajahn Chah, and he used to sit straight all night on the one pras. Apparently he had his jhana samadhi as a novice since living with Ajahn Chah, so he definitely knew how to not think. And Ajahn Anan also has abilities, and he said in general, the foreign monks would think twice as much as your average Thai person. And because we were educated to do that, speculate about a lot of things and critique things. And he said a lot of Western monks, they want to be alone so that they can hear themselves think, or so that they can get their thoughts straight. And he said that the Thais, Thais, when they were alone, they didn't think that much. And there's different benefits and drawbacks. I mean, having lived with Thai people for a long time, some of them could probably benefit from thinking a little bit more. And just as Westerners could benefit from thinking less. And but anyway, so how is my meditation now? So monks like Ajahn Anan and Luang Por Biak, who are my teachers in Thailand, I believe they were born as stream enterers. So monks like that, they had jhana samadhi before they even ordained. Their minds significantly purified, so the hindrances were less. When they begun their mental cultivation, their minds became bright quite quickly. Then we also have the example of Luang Por Liam. I think he was doing Jongkrom, he was doing a meditation retreat, and his mind kind of flipped over, became bright, and never degenerated from that state. So these monks were already, I believe, established when they were born. So for myself, I can't claim that. I wasn't born as a stream enterer. So for other practitioners, it's more of a slow and steady, if you practice well, slow and steady incline with things getting better over time. And then there are some rough patches and there are some more inspiring patches. But certainly the first 5 or 6 years of practice, I needed to use a lot of reflective meditations to incline the mind towards peaceful. So I used to think wisely. And during that period of time, I wrote 15 years ago, I wrote a series of guided meditations because that was largely what I was doing, was using death meditation, contemplating the body as elements, contemplating reasons why it's skillful to be compassionate, all of those things. I used to use the thought, incline the thought to think wisely and use the thinking mind to bring the mind to some peace. So that was largely what I did for the first 10 or 15 years of practice. So modern people do need to learn to use thoughts wisely, but even so, think wisely, because wise thoughts, wholesome thoughts will incline the mind to happy states of contentment. And but for the last 10 years, I don't have to use thinking as much. But I wanted to say that throughout all of that, I did take breath meditation as my foundation. So if I was doing metta, I was doing it with the breath. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. If I was doing body contemplation, hair of the head, kesa, hair of the head, kesa, hair of the body, loma, nails, teeth, and skin, naka, danta. So breathing in, kesa, breathing out, kesa, breathing in, loma, breathing out, loma, etc., etc. Breathing in, ati, bones, breathing out, ati, bones. Or contemplating death, breathing in, maranang, breathing out, maranang. So, and might have been thinking of the ways I might die, remembering corpses that I'd seen, autopsies. So whatever meditation I did, I was keeping the breath in mind. And so that was, I think, very helpful. Now I have a different experience and so that, unskillful thoughts, neurotic thoughts, habits, our old habits that take the mind away from truly being mindful of the breath, and then applying a remedy, thinking that I might die today, thinking of the drawbacks of unskillful thoughts, the various things you have to do. And the mind settles on the breath. So it was quite a bit of effort to keep bringing the mind back to the breath, bringing the mind back to the breath. And then when the mind became peaceful on the breath, which, I could incline it to, even back in those days, but it was a bit of a wrestle. Had to incline the mind to be content with the breath. These days, because of 3 decades of practice, when I wake up in the morning, I'm normally aware of my first in-breath. That's the value of being consistent in practice for decades. When I walk to the bathroom, even though my mind has some drowsiness because it's been asleep for some hours, I automatically am aware of the feelings at the bottom of my feet. So that's come from that's been for about the past 10 years. It's been like that. But there would have been 2 decades of practice that conditioned that. So forcing oneself to do, or just being committed to doing some walking meditation every day, being committed to being mindful of the feelings on the bindabat, the arms round, coming and sitting every morning, every afternoon, every evening, inclining the mind towards the breath. I think for myself, the intensive meditation retreats in Bodh when I started doing 8, 9, and then 10 hours of meditation a day for 5 or 6 weeks, I think that was a real, when the mind became oriented towards being consistently with the breath, I think that was enormously helpful. So now if I'm not talking and I'm listening to someone else, I tend to be aware of my breathing. And even if I am talking, when I stop and I need to breathe, I tend to be aware of that breath. I can feel it. And so when I come to meditate now, there will be some thought activity, but the mind, I observe the breath in my heart area. And all of the hindrances have a feeling component, and all of the hindrances have some dukkha vedana, some unpleasant feeling associated with them. So when I close my eyes and I'm aware of my breath, I'm normally instantly aware that there's some suffering in the heart. And that suffering is related to unpleasant feeling, let's say. That unpleasant feeling is related to the fact that the mind does have a hindrance present in it to some degree. There may be some restlessness, some liking, some not liking, some sleepiness, some anxiety, whatever it is. And so now I just use, rather than attend to the thought, I use the breath to kind of breathe through it and kind of dissolve it with the breath. I just breathe through whatever's in the mind with the intention of whatever it is, knowing it and letting it go, knowing it and letting it go. Whether it's wholesome or unwholesome, whether it's a lot of thoughts or a little bit of thoughts. And normally for myself, after 5 to 10 minutes, there won't be thinking unless I want to think. And my mind is interesting. When it becomes peaceful, it stays peaceful for maybe 20 or 25 minutes. And then there will start to be some thoughts. And so different minds are different. Apparently, Ajahn Anand's mind was similar. Ajahn Biek, when they were practicing together, Ajahn Biek would meditate for hours. Ajahn Anand would meditate for shorter sessions, but frequently throughout the day. So you can sit for a while, get up and walk, and sit again, get up and walk, and sit again. So when I'm doing my intensive practice in Bodhgaya, if you're looking from the outside, this is another thing to make a note of, is practitioners are different, and we can't necessarily assess what they're doing by observing them from the outside. If you're looking from the outside and I wriggle after 40 minutes and change my posture, from the outside you might be thinking, oh, Ajahn Achalo, he's still he's still struggling, still got pain in the body, mind isn't peaceful yet, but he's putting forth a good effort. But what happens is the mind does become peaceful, stays peaceful for about half an hour. Then it comes out of the peacefulness, and then you become aware of pain in the body, pain in the shoulders, pain in the back. And what happens is if I adjust my posture slightly, I can do the same thing again. 5 minutes of pacifying thoughts, another half an hour of peacefulness. And then the mind will come out of that, and I can do the same thing again. I can wriggle my posture, change postures, and I can do it again. And so if I'm doing an intensive retreat, those periods of 20, 25, 30 minutes, the depth of the peacefulness will get more. So I don't want to start talking about, apparently in Upajjhara there's coarse, intermediate, and refined, and then there's the jhanas. But I don't want to make claims or statements. We have rules about this, and we have to be a bit careful. But in general, when I'm doing an intensive meditation retreat, the peacefulness will get deeper. And it's one of the reasons I enjoy meditating in Bodhgaya. It's because that's that. Suppose I've got 3-hour sessions, and I have a half an hour of peacefulness, half an hour of peacefulness, half an hour of peacefulness, and I have that 9 times a day, and I'm doing that for a week, and then I've got a second week, and then I've got a third week, fourth, and a fifth week. So the depth and quality of the peacefulness will tend to get more powerful. And so yes, but in general, I can make my mind pretty peaceful within 5 to 10 minutes, and I use a lot of metta. I use a lot of metta to just wash away whatever unsatisfactoriness, whatever pain there is in the heart, because metta has a pleasant feeling associated with it. When the metta citta becomes manifest in the heart, breathing in may be well, breathing out may be happy, a quality of wholesome warmth and love, that's a pleasant feeling. So whatever mind state was there before, when we pick up metta, that mind state naturally drops away, and there's a pleasant mind state. So you kind of replace unpleasant feelings with pleasant ones. And then with the contentment that comes from that, it's easy to be aware of the breath. Then one takes just the feeling of the breath as the object. The breath tends to get finer and finer. The spaces between the breaths get longer and longer. Keep your attention in the area where you're observing the breath, even when there's a space. And so I'm also somewhat prone to having some interesting visual phenomenon. And again, I can't talk about that very much, but I'm not adept or a master, but I do enjoy some of the things I experience in my meditation. And once again, if I meditate more intensively, the lucidity and dynamism, the beauty and the yes, that phenomenon can also get more interesting. I think the next part of the question is in different, was it different postures, was it? How does it? How is the mindfulness practice different between different environments like the restroom, the bedroom, walking, eating, etc.? So yes, because of the sitting morning, sitting afternoon, sitting evening every day, and the arms round mindfulness of the walking posture, living as a monk in a monastery with other practitioners, I can maintain, the way I maintain mindfulness in all postures is predominantly with the feeling of the breath. So if I'm receiving guests and I'm listening to them, I'm aware of my breath. When I have to talk, I'll be aware of my breath when I stop talking. But I also use metta a lot. So I spread metta to myself, I spread metta to that person as a way to keep the mind wholesome and try to be aware of my breathing. But when I do get up and I have to walk, I will be aware of the feelings at the bottom of my feet. I've just trained myself to be aware of that. So if I'm sitting in the bathroom, similarly, I'll be try to be aware of the in and out breathing. Now, the wonderful thing about having trained with reflective meditation methods and having done a lot of retreats is that now the consistency of the awareness of the breath is pretty good. And also the mind can pick up, while still being aware of the breath, it can just pick up a relevant or suitable meditation object. For example, somebody offered the monks an infrared sauna, small, just one of those small one-person ones, electricity. The Buddha allowed saunas for the monks, and it's quite good for the tight muscles, etc. So I was sitting in the infrared sauna, aware of the breath, but then I contemplate as the body becomes hotter and there's water, as there's some sweat, I contemplate that the breath is wind element. And then I contemplate that the heat is fire, and I contemplate that the sweat is water, and it becomes a 4 elements meditation. So it's like if something impinges on the body mind phenomenon, like heat is impinging, so you contemplate fire element, and sweat is occurring, contemplating water element. It becomes just kind of one can pick up suitable meditation objects and incline the mind to be content and peaceful with what it's experiencing. I think what's interesting is, like, before, if I would get upset about something, there'd probably be more obvious signs on the face and affected body language, and people around would know Ajahn upset. I think these days, if I'm meditating skillfully, I might be upset, but if I'm practicing well, nobody will know. I know, but I'm working with my reaction. I'll be aware of my breath. I'll be aware of the feeling. I don't like what that person said, and I might feel hurt. I might feel disappointed. I might notice that I did something and there was no gratitude. Whatever it is, there might be some disappointment or a little bit of resentment or whatever it is. But I've trained myself not to speak in that moment and to maintain calm composure, meditate on the reaction and drop it. And if it's appropriate to say something, then I probably say it later, not in the moment when I'm upset. But it's probably the case that I would say, if I've been upset by something, 99 out of 100 times I don't say anything. So it's kind of like, what's the point? You know, you're going to make karma, you're going to make the other person feel bad. So I think you'd have to ask the people who are living with me in general. I think they probably give the impression of living with someone who has metta, because I'm not always scolding people. I'm not always admonishing them. I'm not always saying, it might have been appropriate to say thank you. When you were talking loudly, when I was trying to talk with the lay guests, it wasn't helpful. Turning on the grinder and grinding away at the furniture underneath the dana when I'm trying to talk to the lay people isn't actually helpful. I just don't say it. I mostly work with my reaction and let go of my reaction because I'm training myself. And so this is why Anandagiri is for a place for people who have trained, who've come to deepen their practice, because I don't actually give much training. I give the opportunity to practice, but I don't walk around scolding people, which is why the monks here probably look quite cheerful. And they don't have the abbot on their case, and the nuns as well. I make it my practice to give people opportunities, and I make it my practice to work with my reactions, training my mind. And yeah, so I hope something I said may have been interesting to you. Please continue to practice. One thing I can verify is that if you do, it probably does take a morning, afternoon, and evening practice every day for some years to get the kind of results that I'm talking about. And, but it does occur even in this day and age. So if we are diligent and consistent. I think if you'd told me even 15 years ago that the day would come that you'll wake up and be aware of your in-breath without even trying, and that you can go to your seat and meditate and your mind will be peaceful within 5 minutes every time you sit. If you'd told me that 2 decades ago, I probably wouldn't have believed you, but I would have been very happy to hear it. And I'm glad I stuck with it. And of course, we have to continue with our practice. Ajahn Chah says practitioners who meditate a lot and have good virtue, they begin to experience in their mind a quality of happiness similar to the devas. And Ajahn Anan calls these manusa devo, human beings with deva minds. And Ajahn Anan has said about Ajahn Achalo several things. He does say about me that I have unshakable faith in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And he says that I have a mind like a Tushita Deva a lot of the time. So that's the contentment and not being too reactive. But Tushita Devas are not necessarily enlightened. It is the fourth heaven realm, but it's not enlightenment. So Ajahn Chah says this is a danger for well-practiced monks to get stuck being kind of content. One can get stuck with being contented. And this is a bit of a challenge I have now. It's like I don't actually have to force myself to meditate to bring the mind to some feelings of joy or contentment or ease. In the past, I would have to run to my cushion because I was suffering, and that would be the place that I would find some ease from my suffering. But now I can sit on my sofa and drink a cup of tea and pet the cat and feel pretty good, actually. It's all right, no real suffering impinging too much. So I have to be a bit strict with myself to force myself to sit. And I do kind of drag myself off to India once or twice a year and force myself to sit for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. I'm doing that in a week or so, actually. I've been going back to Bodh Gaya. I'm still working on fulfilling my vow. So one has to, and those are the occasions where it's more likely to have a deep, penetrative insight into the ultimate nature of reality. Once you get your meditation up to 8 or 9 hours a day. And it's interesting for myself, part of my karma, I think, is the most peaceful meditations and the most profound insights I've had have tended to be in the holy sites in India. And I don't think that's a common experience. I think people do get some extra inspiration. They reflect on what happened there, helps them feel closer to the Buddha and his disciples. But not that many people get the most deepest samadhi or the most profound insight in a crowded, noisy, dirty place. But seems to be my mind. I think my mind has a certain sensitivity to the merit of the Buddhas. So I am able to somehow kind of plug in and get a bit of extra juice, which helps my practice in those places. So yeah, and in general, I just we have to be careful when we judge practitioners, because we don't actually know what the quality of the inside of their mind is like. So a person can seem quite relaxed and friendly, making a few jokes, but we can't actually see how peaceful their mind is, or how, if their mind is purified to a significant degree or not. And sometimes people expect the form to be a certain way. I can tell you from my own experience that if I'm sitting ramrod straight, that means I'm working with something. That means I've got hindrances. And I'm working with them, trying to bring the mind to peace. If my mind is peaceful, my body will be slightly slouched and my head will be bent over. That's when my mind is peaceful. And it might be very peaceful. Someone from the outside might think Ajahn Achalo's mind is affected by sloth and torpor. He's sleeping in the sitting posture. And they would be wrong. And when I sit ramrod straight, you might think, oh, Ajahn Achalo's got some good samadhi today. That's when Ajahn Achalo is working with his hindrances. And again, sit for 20 minutes wriggling. It's like, oh, this monk's still not equanimous with his Vedana. It's like, no, I'm just adjusting my posture so that I can make my mind peaceful for another half an hour. And there was a person who was, I guess that's one of the dangers of meditating in public. There was a person who was quite critical of me, and she actually tried to dissuade one of my closest supporters and most generous benefactors from following me, because she said, from looking at me in Bodh Gaya, she said, Ajahn Achalo is attached to the jhanas and is developing psychic powers, and that's not what the Buddha recommended, and he's pulling you in the wrong direction, and he's not a good teacher for you, and you should get a better teacher, this person said. Now, and she said it repeatedly, and she had her friends say it as well. Now, unfortunately, for that person, she was fault finding with a bhikkhu who was practicing well and criticizing him when his mind was very bright. That will not be conducive to her growth in Dhamma. And I felt a bit sad about it, because when she comes to actually knuckle down and really do the practice, she will probably have people being critical of her and saying that she's doing the wrong thing, or etc. So the thing is, even if I was attached to jhana and I could enter jhana for 10 hours a day under the Bodhi tree, it would still be wholesome. It's not the kind of thing that one would criticize. The Buddha says one of the ways you know that his teachings are changing and Buddhism is degenerating is when people criticize those who practice samadhi. So if anybody criticizes a meditation monk for meditating, you might gently prompt that person to understanding that this is what the Buddha said is a sign of his teachings degenerating, because the Buddha himself praised people for meditating and told his monks to go back and meditate. So don't criticize, my advice, don't criticize people for meditating. Good Buddhist practitioners are supposed to meditate. Don't assume that a person, you can't look from outside and know what they're doing actually. And, Ajahn Chah could, Ajahn Anand can, but most people can't. So to be a little bit careful. Luang Por Chah says, the reason I'm saying this is because I don't want people to create obstructive karmas for themselves. I want you to grow in Dhamma. I want you to develop. I don't want you to unnecessarily cause obstructions. 95% of your attention should be on assessing your own efforts and seeing your faults and trying to do better. And yeah. But the truth is, so anybody meditating under the Bodhi tree will be, it's like a Olympic marathon session of cultivating the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It's like there's so much noise, there's so much change in temperature, there's so much insects, there's so many smells, there's so much sense contact to be worked with. You have no choice but to cultivate a lot of mindfulness. And that is what then leads to, as I said earlier, I do get the best samadhi when I'm in Bodh Gaya, but the best samadhi that I get is a result of the best sati coming from working with contact on all of those sense bases. So just because a person's sitting there, if he is sitting straight, looking impressive, probably working quite hard by being mindful of the sense bases. And if he's slumped over a bit, that might be quite peaceful. So, yeah. Anyway, a bit meandering, but I hope something I said was interesting, useful to you. Please put a lot of effort into your practice.